Is global warming the honest truth? Let's get into this one.
RevelatorAlf.
Hello, welcome to RevelatorAlf podcast on Spotify. This will also be featured on the Alf Gasparo YouTube channel. So go check this out if you want to watch this podcast in its entirety in video form. Also, you can watch the clips there as well. Is global warming the truth? Is it the honest truth? Is it actually happening? Well, if you ask scientists, climatologists, of course they would say that. And you just got to look around the world at what's happening to local weather patterns. And you say, oh, yes, we're getting warmer. It's getting warmer. Ice caps are melting. They're receding. We're having more extreme weather in varying locations. But is this the true picture? Is this the honest representation of global warming? And here is where the naysayers jump in. This is where a lot of people say, oh, no, global warming isn't happening. It's just a myth. The problem is that there's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of bias out there on all sides. And my thought has always been that regardless of what research paper has been published or what study has been performed, there's always bias within that. Who's paying for the research? Who's paying for the study? Are they all living in the same echo chamber? Everybody's reinforcing what other people are saying, what the scientists are saying. There used to be a time where scientists were that. They were just scientists. They would report on the evidence that they could reproduce in the lab or that they could glean from experimentation. These are real world results that scientists and researchers would be able to deliver to us and say, look, these are the facts. But that just doesn't seem to be the case anymore. Whilst the facts are there, you're just wondering, are they the full facts? Or are they only the facts that they want you to know? The issue with global warming is not necessarily that it's happening. It's more to do with, has it happened before and will it happen again? The biggest influence on climate of the Earth is the sun. Well, the sun goes through different phases, different cycles. The Earth itself goes through different phases and cycles. And on a long enough timeline, we're going to see patterns develop. We're going to see patterns repeat themselves. We're going to see events repeat themselves. All weather that we have delivered to us in the news or in online media or newspapers, if they still exist, of course, it's all based upon weather models. What has been observed before. In olden times, you'd have governments or military who would send out individuals to certain locations and have them positioned there, stationed there for a year or so, just noting down wind patterns, rainfall, temperature. And that will all be logged so that if they see something else developing that's very similar, again, they can say, okay, we know that this weather is going to approach. And that's how weather has been built up. But weather record keeping has only really been going for 200 or 300 years at best. An accurate weather reading has only been 100 plus years. 150 years, something like that. So on a long enough timeline, it's a very short window. So the counter argument to global warming is that, yes, it might be happening, but it's not as catastrophic as people might think. And also how we're trying to regulate it or modify it or counteract global warming, it's kind of not going to do anything. It's just going to happen. Now, there's not a lot we can do. Now, in reality, all that we can do is affect pollution and affect the way we live. But with a growing population, a growing global population, then we have to find cleaner ways, better ways of producing food, products and services for a growing population that might just be too much. The problem with the topic of global warming is that it's multifactorial. There are so many different layers to it. There's so many different variables to it. And it's not only about weather patterns and weather phenomenon and the sun and the melting polar caps. It's also to do with lifestyle. It's all to do with how much pollution we put in the air, what sort of cars we're driving. And the pollution that we create from transportation only really accounts for about 25% of all pollution in the atmosphere. And of that 25%, half of that is produced by cars and trucks, let's say, small pickup trucks, small SUVs, small 4x4s. The other half of that 25% is all down to commercial transport, whether by lorries or large trucks, trains, planes, and ships. So if we talk about the big polluters in the world, or what we perceive as the big polluters, air traffic, actually as a percentage is very, very small. Now, the biggest pollution is in lifestyle and in industry as well. If we've got other countries that are high pollutants, or the pollution that is generated by generating energy or to generate fossil fuels, then that is what generates most pollution in the world. And also we got to think about the pollution that is created by food production as well, and also many countries around the world who'd rather burn things rather than recycle. So unless you have a total global change in how we affect pollution, then you're never really going to slow it down, considering the amount of people that are on the planet. And we're over 7 billion right now. It won't be long before we're 8 billion, then 9, then 10, then 12 billion. So not only are they going to have to find cleaner ways to produce energy and to support the humanity on the planet, but also they're going to have to find cleaner ways to produce food as well. And it's not only about pollution, but it's also about the chemicals that are being used as well. But we're talking about a very small time frame. We're talking about the next generation and possibly the generation thereafter, our grandchildren or our grandchildren's children. Thereafter, we can't really affect anything in the future unless these are permanent changes. But still, the Earth is still warming up, and that's beyond our control. That is to do with the sun, the effect of the sun. And what has happened throughout history is that the Earth warms up and then it cools down, usually by some catastrophic event. We enter an ice age, cools down, and then it generates up again. Humanity is lost, society is lost, a few thousand years pass, and then life starts again. Humanity rises to the top again, and the whole cycle has started again. Much has been said in recent years about what happened 12,000 years ago when there was another mini ice age. But was society functioning before that ice age existed? Were there civilizations on Earth that are advanced civilizations that have all been lost to time? Because a catastrophic event occurred, because a new ice age was born, prior civilizations were totally lost. Now, could that happen again? Well, if you think about it, our whole footprint on Earth would be wiped out over a course of 1,000 years or 2,000 years. Everything would turn to dust. Houses would turn to dust. Wood would rot away. Plastic would disintegrate. Metals would just rust away or just be reabsorbed into the earth. There will be very, very few indications that humanity existed before the next ice age. Only those that were frozen in time, let's say. And then by the time a civilization is born again, we could be talking about another 10, 12,000 years, then there'll be no indication of our current existence. So everything is cyclical, everything is in a sine wave. I was listening to a very interesting theory about time the other day, and they're talking about time as a loop. Time is a loop. Time is a big circle. Now, we all consider a circle to be small. We can see the curves. But if you stretch out time long enough, the circle is huge, huge beyond reason. Then we won't be able to distinguish the curvature of that circle. So what we believe is yesterday could actually be tomorrow in the far distant future. What we think of tomorrow could indeed be yesterday far into the past. So time has a huge impact on not only how we perceive global warming in this case, but also what our net effect is on global warming, on climate models. We do not impact the sun impacts us. Humanity and civilization has a negative impact on the earth, no doubt, and pollution, and global warming is happening. And the biggest impact on global warming that is accelerating it is the effect of humanity. So the science is there. It is to be believed. But there are more questions to be asked. There are more questions on the research that has been done and will be done, and also the decisions by politicians and scientists out there that would have you believe that the only way forward is to affect this change here or that change there. And possibly the only question that needs to be asked that isn't being asked is whether any of these policies, any of these decisions that are being made, whether they're just futile. It doesn't really matter, because when we stretch out time far into the distant future, we're going to find that time just repeats itself. Episodes, events just repeat themselves. And there is evidence in history from this, that events just repeat themselves, catastrophic events repeat themselves. As a species, we believe we control the Earth. We control the solar system. We control the sun. In actual fact, we control very little. We try to work in harmony with nature. We try to capitalize over what is there. Societies and civilizations spring up where conditions are most favorable. And when they're not, that's where we see less population. But in historic times, those same locations may have been abundant with life, because the conditions, environmental conditions at the time, was different. We've all heard of the stories where in Roman times they were growing grapes in the north of Scotland. It was a much warmer time then. No, you would never consider growing grapes in northern Scotland. Well, when I was a lad 30, 40 years ago, you would never thought about growing grapes in England. Well, that's quite a common thing now. So global warming has changed the way we live, changed the way we grow crops, and it will continue to change the way we live as well. Different areas of the world will become less productive and other parts of the world will become more productive. As long as societies and nations can agree that the way forward is to protect the planet more, to be less polluting. But unfortunately, one of the biggest drawbacks of the global society is that money is a driving factor to ignore all that. And people and nations and governments will want to war. And the fuel behind war is usually money. So whilst we have nations that still want to fight each other, that still want to war against each other, whilst people will prioritize other aspects of their life, they won't really be caring about global warming. That will have a dramatic effect on certain people's lives in, let's say, 100, 200 years' time. Because people can't see it happening now, and it having a dramatic effect on their lives right now. There hasn't really been the urgency to change lifestyles. But global warming has been happening. It's been happening for a long time. And part of that is human interference, which has accelerated the process. But part of it is just the natural cycle of the effect of the sun on the earth as well. Is global warming the honest truth? Yes, in part. But there's so many other questions to ask. There's got to be. There's got to be other questions to ask. The real effect, the most notable variables. What can be done? Is it all futile? By us all driving electric cars, will that really make a big difference? Do we have to do away with all power stations and all go nuclear all around the world? So many questions and so many topics and issues that would rather be ignored in favour of just continuing the same diatribe of global warming and how it affects us all and what we should do about it. There should just be more questions, more discussion, more research on the best ways to tackle it, on the best ways to live in harmony with it, and what we can all do for the future and future generations. This has been the RevelatorAlf podcast, and it will be available on the Alf Gasparo YouTube channel as well. Is global warming the honest truth? Well, I think we can say in part. In part it is. Let us know your thoughts. You can go to the website RevelatorAlf.com for your support on Stripe and also on PayPal as well. You can also join the Patreon page RevelatorAlf as well. And we'll catch you again on another podcast coming very soon. Bye now.